This is Jet Jaguar. We're having a bit of a listen here to Peavey Rage by Peace Point. It's an original track from a Swellington artist, which I recently remixed for his album Cycles. I'll put the links in the description of the video so you can check out both the original track and the remix that I did. Oof, that solo, eh? And yeah, I just wanted to do a bit of a chat through how I went about this remix. Did a few things a little bit differently. One thing is that I didn't add any melodic or harmonic stuff to my version. I only worked with what you're listening to now, these stems, plus I added some percussion and a field recording. So yeah, classic approach with a remix is that you'll receive what we call stems, which is what you can see on the screen now, these different audio files in blue. And this track, the kind of key to it to me seems to be this solo here. This, when I say solo, as in, you know, someone soloing, like a guitar solo, synth solo. And one thing that kind of threw me when I asked James, who's Peace Point, if I could remix this track, was that it doesn't actually seem to be in a fixed tempo. So if you think about remixing coming out of, you know, dance culture, the beat is everything, right? And I was pretty thrown when I realized that actually this wasn't gonna work, in the sense that the elements don't fit into a grid, you know? I can't go, oh sweet, this is 120 BPM and off we go, or even, oh, this is 4/4. So I did actually consider whether I was going to listen to another track off Cycles and, you know, ask to remix that one instead. But no, I thought I'd go with it because it's not like this is particularly beat-based music, but it actually kind of gave me a bit of direction. I thought, all right, well, I'll think about doing something slightly more rhythmic. So I actually started over here with this synth bass part, and I'll just take a minute now just to mute all these tracks and load up my version of things. So I'll just deactivate all of that. Rip. Deactivating stuff and chucking them into a group is awesome if you happen to use Bitwig, this software. You can also set a keyboard shortcut to hide all inactive tracks, which I find super helpful. Alrighty. So, in the software I'm using, Bitwig, you've got what's called the clip launcher on the left-hand side, and you can basically make loops there. I understand it's very similar in Ableton Live, but I'm one of these weirdos that, despite the fact I've been making electronic music for 28 years, I haven't used Live. Yeah, maybe I'm just a contrary jerk. Oh well. And this is what I did. So I chose a tempo and chose a time signature. The tempo was based on trying to map to the original as much as I could. The time signature, I actually put this in 11/8, and in part that was kind of a nod to the first thing that I ever had released, a track, Seeper. That was in 11/8. It's in 1996 on a compilation called Skankatronics. And it was also that I'd been listening to a guy, he's an Iranian-born guy in Berlin, Mohammad Reza Mortazavi, and his album, I've forgotten the name offhand, but yeah, it's all in 11/8, and it sounds great. So I was thinking, all right, well, I'll challenge myself all these years down the track to try and kind of create something that I felt still flowed and had a really kind of, you know, general and gentle and not kind of aggro or confrontational kind of feel to the time signature. So yeah, what I was doing here is basically time stretching it, so just dragging the start points of sounds. So if you can see at the bottom of my screen, yeah, just dragging stuff around until it was in time. And at the end of what became a 12-bar phrase, you'll hear that I let it go faster, and I really like that kind of little bit of momentum just coming back into the start of the phrase again. Yeah, very little bit of momentum. Cool. And so then there's 2 more tracks from James's original stems where I took what he'd been doing and time stretched those pieces. Come on. Yeah. So this is 1 bar of 11/8. Yeah, and again, I just sort of dragged the timing around to make that work and got that looping. And then what I'm doing here in terms of this effects chain is basically I've got a low pass filter on each stereo channel, so on the left and right channel, and the cutoff frequency of the filter changes at the start of every bar, and it changes a different amount on the left and the right. Yeah, so I'm doing that by having an LFO and sending the LFO into kind of a sample and hold thing that captures basically a point in that oscillation, and captures that every 11/8 beats. So since we're in 11/8, that's once a bar, and changes the cutoff frequency of a low pass filter that's designed to sound like a Moog filter. Part of doing this really extremely on the stereo channels was that it kind of creates this panning effect. Essentially, it creates stereo movement because you can imagine if all the top ends chopped off the sound, then it just sounds naturally quieter. So kind of shifts around in space, and then there's just a little delays on that. There's a VST plugin here called Track Spacer. I need to load up the next track really to show what this is doing. But Track Spacer is a dynamic EQ that listens to a side-chained channel and basically scoops out or cuts out frequency amounts based on the sidechain. So there's a second, here we go. Yeah, there's a second lot of the same track. So I actually just copied and pasted the arpeggio onto a second track, reversed it, and then pitched it down. So it's an octave lower and half the time. Half the speed, so twice the time. Yeah. So I'll just listen to that for a mo. I'll solo the reverse one. Yeah, so this is just 2 layers, and I thought, cool, this is going to be a kind of foundational thing. I'm going to use this to start the track. So I work on these clips on their own. Sometimes that goes so filtered down that it's as good as silent. And then on top of that, I thought, right, I wanted to actually build out a further kind of rhythmic layer. So I put the bass back in as well. Then the other thing I added to the mix is just a couple of drum sounds. Really happy with these kicks at the end of the phrase. Yeah, there's kind of groups of 3 that kind of just, I don't know, again, kind of have that feeling of kind of just giving a little bit of propulsion that leads into the one, like, sort of brings you back to the start. In what I hope is quite a natural kind of way. Yeah, so these are just, I think they're all just stock samples that I'm just using. Yeah, these are just a couple of like preset kind of finger cymbals samples. And yeah, again, this kick is just something out of the sample library. I'm really not precious about just taking sounds that I think work and using them. And then this snare. What? Oh, right, sorry, there's a group track. I was going to say, why is there only a filter on there? Yeah. Again, it's just a sample, and then I've messed around with it. And that's being run into a copy of Silo, which is just adding a little bit of delay to it, or kind of reverb to it. I won't go into too much more on that one. So yeah, in terms of the kind of stuff that I added to create this kind of rhythmic foundation, we've got the bass stuff, we've got the arpeggios, we've got the percussion. That's all in a fixed time signature looping around. And then if I'll just kill all of that then the other things that I put in the track to just kind of give it more structure when I started sort of looping it, not looping it out, structuring it out on the right hand side. If we go over to the to this arranger view over here, is I've taken these 3 tracks from the original, and if I click into any one of these, it's just the waveform from James's original track, and I haven't messed with the tempo, I haven't dragged it around or anything, but it's 3 different layers that are then being gated, so they're being sent into a sort of this is like a group, so it's like a kind of submix group channel that is completely killing the volume. So basically it's letting nothing through in the mix. And then what I'm doing is I'm just turning it up at the start of every bar. So if we listen to just this on its own, you'll get this sort of one little note at the start of the bar, and then it's coming into a delay. Be quiet. It's every second bar by the looks of it. Yeah. And so that's adding, if I put the arpeggios back in. So it's adding this layer that hits on the beat again. But to be honest, it's really subtle. Once I listen to it in the mix, I'm like, really? Is it there? Yeah. And so that's just another approach to kind of thinking about how I might remix stuff. It's just taking the raw material and then basically slicing it in an almost arbitrary way, like just letting a piece through, and it's kind of a chance thing. Like, is it going to sound good? Is it going to be on the beat? Is it going to have some kind of little rhythmic thing within it when it, kind of that creeps in? And then finally, take some stuff out again here. Oof, I really took everything out, eh? Right, so that boop loop thing has been mixed down, so this is what it sounds like in the mix. And I forgot about that. It's actually got a the thing that to me almost sounds like some kind of a bird, like a kind of goose or something. It's actually it's feedback in the mix. Yeah. So in the delay chain, I've got there's a bit reducer, like something, a bit crusher kind of thing, that actually creates feedback. And so by the end, James's original sounds have actually been lost under kind of this very quiet feedback, and I really liked that in the mix. It's all very quiet on its own. So then the other things that I put in the mix, I've got 3 tracks that I didn't do anything to in terms of effects or reprocessing or remixing, except that original solo that I was saying I thought was the key to the original Peace Point track. I reversed it. I flipped the entire thing. So yeah, so that audio is just coming in backwards there. And since it's such a kind of floaty, drifty track with not a really strong sense of tempo in the first place, I just felt like I could just chuck in these other sounds, and take out the solo. These layers aren't tightly rhythmic in any sense. It's not like it's clear where the beats are. So I just literally chuck them in and let them evolve as beautifully as they do in the original, and it kind of adds more continuity. Because I was really conscious of the fact that the point of this remix, or the way it's going to be released, is it's at the end of cycles. It's after you listen to the original tracks. So I didn't want it to be a massive departure. I didn't want it to be like this kind of rude shock at the end of what's really beautiful, chilled out kind of release. So I just yeah, was kind of conscious of continuity, I suppose. I didn't want to make my remix too far from James's original track. And then the final thing I've got in the mix is a field recording, because I can't resist it. And we'll just let this come in. So this is a field recording from Punakaiki on the west coast of New Zealand, South Island. And from memory, this is running into reels. Yeah, it is. So reels is just a kind of tape emulation from audio thing. Yeah, I really like it. And yeah, I like the voices and things lurking in the background of this. Let's rewind it and give it a listen with everything in there so that you can hear that in context. And you'll find that the voices are actually very kind of, I think, kind of just kind of hiding away in the mix. They're not really very present. Just checking everything's in there. There we go. I love a bit of human voice just kind of lurking in the background. You can't really tell what's going on. Yeah, all about it. So yeah, that'll do for this. If you have any questions or comments, then obviously sing out, and happy to answer them. Cheers.